morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Don't be shocked by the accent. I live in Orlando, Florida, and a native Australian. And I'd also like to introduce the next panelists this morning. So Tiara and Wayne and Ben and Chris, if you could make your way up, would be great. Just to sort of reiterate before we get into the panel, this is really such a critical aspect of what we're trying to do to make sure that kids are having an amazing experience when they come into youth sport. And Kelsey went through some of those key stats, but I do want to reiterate those stats based on how important this subject is and certainly what we're doing. Of 6.5 million youth coaches in this country, 1 in 5 are trained effectively around motivation. And only 1 in 3 are trained around some level of sports skills. So 6.5 million youth coaches, very, very few are trained, which again is really scary. If they are trained by skilled coaches, only 5% of those kids quit the sport the next year. But if they're not, currently it's close to 25%. So it is really significant, the role of the coach and the experience that they create in setting an environment for kids to be the best that they can be. Quality of coaching and the coach's behaviour is the #1 concern for parents. So again, when you make choices about, as a parent, what do you want to get your kids into, who's guiding those kids is critically important. And a top official of the YMCA, which I expect was Ben, says that's his organisation's most pressing issue. So, you know, this is something that is not going away. As a collective, we need to make some major changes. So we're going to talk about that today. So I want to introduce Tiara Mcintosh down the end. She's a volunteer coach at the Volvo City Kids Foundation. She's right at the coalface. Wayne Moss here. Wayne is the Executive Director of the National Council of Youth Sports, so overseeing organisations that deal with close to 60 million kids. Ben Reid is a specialist for sports and rec for YMCA, and the YMCA has been a leader in piloting this course. And my good friend Chris Snyder, who's the Director of Education for the US Olympic Committee, and also a partner of Project Play and coached youth sports for a long time. So sort of an opening mark, I'm keen to get your thoughts around the current environment about youth coaching and just your initial thoughts. I'm going to start with Ben, because if I start with Chris, 30 minutes later we'll be closing this down.
So currently right now, what YMCAs are experiencing is a huge opportunity to recruit and retain more coaches. As the numbers have kind of been thrown out, nationally speaking on behalf of YMCAs across the country, what we're experiencing is we're recruiting coaches typically between 10 to 40% at the 11th hour, meaning that we're on the phone trying to call parents, caregivers, asking, borderline begging them to volunteer coach. And when we get them in, what ends up happening is, oh, background check, here you go, here's all the qualifications, and oh, by the way, here's 10 8-year-olds. Good luck in your games tomorrow. And so it provides us with a great opportunity to have a streamlined approach to this.
Yeah. Wayne, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I can appreciate that, Ben. I've been on the other end of that, registering my son for sports, for basketball, and, oh, by the way, we need a coach, and we need you to do it. And they didn't even know who I was, right? And so when you think about the landscape, 84% of dads are coaching their own kids. So, oftentimes you find, people who are engaged in coaching who are engaged for good reasons, but aren't necessarily equipped, don't necessarily have the skill or the training for it, but have good hearts. And so, I'm super stoked about this particular coaching tool for the difference that it can make in that arena.
And Tiara, as a youth coach yourself?
I guess I'm pretty much on the other side of that. Initially wanting to coach, I thought, well, I played basketball, so maybe I could just be a coach at basketball, but getting there and understanding that there's other things that go into being a coach, and I think the organization that I work with actually had an advantage with being part of the sample for testing out the new tool. So we have extra resources. We know where to get the resources from.
Yeah.
So
I will go to Chris. Chris was a key figure along with Kelsey in sort of developing this tool. So Chris, when you went through the process of developing the tool and what type of content, what was in your mind, with regards to what you wanted this product to look like, why it was so important, to get it into the market?
Thanks. One of the interesting things with this in this space was that there's amazing things happening across the entire country that youth coaches in this space have no idea where to go to get it. Our national governing bodies, organizations that are connected to them or even not, build amazing things. People in this room build amazing things that are out in the world that our volunteer coaches can't find, won't have the time to find, or aren't sure where to go look for. So the real vision for it when we were working with Kelsey and Nike is saying, how do we pull it into one place, give those of you doing amazing work a chance to connect with them, but be a trusted location where every youth coach can come and know they're going to get some good stuff to help them the next day, because that's what they told us they wanted. They wanted something to get through the next practice. And many of us work 60 hours a week in this space and try to make the good stuff at the top happen. But at the end of the day, it's can we arm that volunteer coach with what they need to get through practice and do it the right way so the kid comes back. So that was kind of the focus.
Yeah. So we're just getting started. I do have been told to plug slido.com, so if you haven't been on it, please go on that and log some questions. We are going to have 5 minutes at the end to certainly go through some of the questions as we work through that. So Wayne, obviously you're working with a number of youth organisations that deliver youth sport. How do you see this working for them? Do you know what I mean? This tool and what can that bring?
Yeah, so I see this tool as a godsend for many organizations and for the volunteers and coaches that are aligned to it. I come out of the Boys and Girls Club of America world where, we were providing support to 4,200 clubs around the country. And, like Ben, I understand, you've got a sophisticated system where you're assisting, but even at that level, it's difficult to provide the appropriate tools. And so we have lots of folks that are in the youth space who are not a part of those large and sophisticated systems. And so this tool provides them with an awesome opportunity to take advantage of something that's quick, that's easy, that's impactful. And so I think this has a huge impact, can potentially have a huge impact on the youth sport landscape and for the organizations that we support.
Yeah. And Ben, from a YMCA point of view, what's the appetite? Sometimes great work's done and these tools get in play and they sometimes sit there and not used because, to Chris's point, people are so active and busy and they sort of land in and sort of understand. So do you feel there is an appetite from youth coaches that they want this and how this can help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important factors here is it's FREE. Which working for a nonprofit is huge, and as Wayne can attest to with the Boys and Girls Clubs and experience now, is that's often a first thing that our administrators look at is what tools and resources are available out there that are free. And then you piggyback that with the fact that now these tools and resources also include a foundational approach to coaching. So it's not just X's and O's. It's how to work with kids, how do you talk to kids, how do you celebrate what kids are doing, which then in turn really gives our volunteer coaches confidence in delivering your program. Because with YMCAs, our volunteer coaches, which 99% of our coaches are, they are the brand or the face of the Y outside of the YMCA. So if we can equip them with these tools and resources, we intend to see our retention with participation increase to what Chris mentioned, and also our coaches coming back because they feel better educated to deliver the program.
Yeah. So Chris, I'm going to come back to you. Sorry, Wayne.
Yeah, so you said something that I think is pretty key, just about X's and O's in coaching, and then all the life skills kind of stuff. And I think if we look back at our own experience in life, the coaches that have made the biggest impact for us weren't necessarily the ones who had the most technical competence within, like the X's and O's in the game, but it's Coach Jones who you knew loved you and cared about you. And, again, as I think about this particular resource, building that side of the social and emotional side of the house so that as our coaches are working with our young people, they're really doing so in a way that are building them.
Yeah. Tiara, you said you've been piloting the tool, with the coaches around you. How did it help from a hands-on application point of view for what you're doing?
I think it was, for one, like easy accessible. It was very easy to read. It didn't take up too much time. The videos were very informative, but also engaging. So I think that, especially being a volunteer, a lot of times they have other jobs, or they may be in school, or they're younger or older, whatever the case may be. It doesn't take up too much time, but it's so much it doesn't take up too much of your time to do, but it's a lot of information in one setting that you can take with you moving forward.
Yeah. Chris, I'm interested, you obviously work for the USOC, which that brand is about obviously creating Olympic medalists and gold medalists. The USOC stance with this, obviously this is very grassroots, and I'd love you to talk through the importance of this tool from a USOC's perspective, and how you're working with the national governing bodies to be able to make sure that the quality of coach education, which starts with this tool, sort of rises up to make sure that kids are having great experiences.
Yeah, what's awesome about being in the coaching department at the Olympic Committee is the fact that we understand those true life skills and those true connection skills are what win medals at the top or win hearts at the bottom. It doesn't matter if you're an elite coach or a youth coach. We're asking all of our coaches to do the same thing. Be athlete-centric, figure out what they need, give them what they need, and love them. John Wooden has love in his pyramid of success, all about how do you actually care about that individual, and they'll run through a wall for you, do the right things. And we have a quality coaching framework that pulls all the research from the past 20 years that shows you'll win more if you do a better job with those life skills. Those people call them soft skills. I call them concrete skills. If you can't do it and connect with your athletes, you're in a bad space. So when you look at the course that we built, you look at the resources that are in there about if you have a child with ADHD, how do you get some information on how to work with them? If the kid's got autism, here's how to work with them. Or if you're with an all-girls team, how do I work with them? Because there's a lot of dads that are coaching their daughters now, way more than moms, which we'd love to change. But how do I get resources to make sure that they do it right? And then you go through our course, and it's all sport agnostic, but the whole idea is, understand winning is extremely low on the rankings of 12 and under. And yeah, at the top, the athletes want to win, but they want to have the resources that are right for them at the right time. That's the number one most important thing. They know they'll get the outputs if the process is right. So I get excited because we can build the process over the outcomes and make that important. And no matter if you're at the top of the Olympic podium or if you're building that next JV All-Star, you got to do the same thing. You got to love them and teach them the right thing.
Yeah. So I see a lot of people on their phones. Obviously, they're downloading the app and going through it right now, which is great. So Ben, from a YMCA point of view, because there are people from different organisations here and sports specific, and I'd love you to sort of give the audience a thought about how, from a WISE point of view, you're going to implement this tool, because a lot of these people may be thinking, well, now how would I do this? So do you have any thoughts on how you're going to approach that?
Yeah, great question. So first, we participated in the pilot of the first draft with 25 associations from across the country that are YMCAs, provided feedback to Chris and Kelsey. And then now moving forward, what we're looking at is launching this out to the other 820 plus associations, which encompass 2,400 branches or centers across the country for Y Sports. But I think what's important is what Chris mentioned earlier, this is program agnostic. So when you download it, you take it, you can totally see that this is applicable to all sports, which is very, very key for YMCA sports directors because we're operating multiple sports programs. And then the other component that I think is very, very cool on this is there's access to other resources like national governing bodies or major affiliates that you can pull in sport-specific tools and resources for your volunteer coaches.
Yeah. Tiara, it's great having you up here as a female, representing the females with regards to being at the coalface and coaching sports. So obviously over the last number of years, the numbers around female coaches have been around 25%. In the last couple of years, they've dropped. They're heading back down towards 20%. So thank you for what you're doing, and for all for the women out there, thank you for what you're doing. You're a critical piece to getting kids into the game. How does this tool help you? And we've spoken about that, but getting more women into coaching and particularly sort of giving back to the youth. How do you think that can help from a confidence point of view, from a knowledge perspective, from your perspective?
Just to kind of piggyback off of what the other panelists spoke about earlier, it's not just specific to the logistics of the sport, like X's and O's like they were speaking about earlier, but it's about like CPR, making sure we're CPR and first aid certified, communicating with the parents. There's other forms of coaching or other things that go into coaching, and I think that that tool can kind of open it up to more females to understand, like, hey, I may not be an expert at flag football, but I can support the kids on the sideline, can support the parents, I can, pull them to the side and work on specific things, life skills training. So. Yeah.
And to Ben and Wayne, any thoughts around that as well, the recruitment of female coaches into youth sport?
Yes. Oh, so you want to punt it to me?
I knew you were ready.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is an issue, and you tell me if you think this is correct or not. I think also there's sometimes the issue of perceived confidence around engagement, and if a woman is not necessarily confident in her ability or believes that she may not necessarily have the confidence, that may hold her back. I think a tool like this definitely provides the opportunity to, provide that background and, all the things, and really, I think many things that women bring in a way that men don't. And so I think that this could be a huge asset as we look to grow women in the game. We need more women coaches. We need more women involved. And I think as our participants, as our young men and young women even see more female coaches, it'll attract more coaches, female coaches, and have a different impact on the game.
Yep. So Chris, it's been raised a couple of times that the tool is across all sports, but also I noticed going through the course that there are resources specific that you've been laying. So can you just sort of talk to the group about how people that have maybe specific skills they want to teach would use this and then layer in their information?
Yeah, what's great about it is you go through the course and it hits the highlights of how you really get to coach kids, how you get to talk to them, and there's trusted resources they can link to and go to throughout the course, but then it lives on in the resource library and the app and whatnot, so you can access it really quickly. Our national governing bodies have been amazing partners, especially over the past 5-6 years, to really bond to battle versus battling to bond over trying to close those gaps in the youth space and get connected. We used to put $40, $50 memberships in front of our resources. This is an opportunity now to get you in, to get you, understanding, giving that confidence so anyone can coach the sport. And then if you want to take the next step and go to their amazing programming. But then there's opportunities moving forward where everyone in this room has a call to action where as you go on, you look through it and there's other amazing stuff that you think should be in there, stuff that helps that space to add resources to help that 12 and under coach. Send it our way. We'll review it every couple of weeks and add new things. The thing I'll challenge you with is a big thing Nike and Kelsey brought to this project was the voice of the child. How do we go ahead and make sure things are dialed in so when a parent, a volunteer coach are looking at this, we're not using big terms many of us use in here. We're not using those things that confuse them. We're using terminology that makes sense, and when they apply it with the kids are in and they're engaged. So it's got to be fun. We had an amazing copywriter, Nicole, that dove in and really made sure the voice was there. Tom Ferry contributed, Sue Hunt, all to make sure the voice of the kid was in this course. So if your resources are written to those 60-hour-a-week professionals, get it down to that coach who's working with the 12-year-olds and below that are in the space, to the Tiaras that are out there on the front lines making it happen, so they can dial it in and make sure those kids have a great experience. So that's my challenge to you. We're happy to receive ideas, but you got to go ahead and make sure it's going to hit the space. And last thing is, make sure you're part of kind of the new movement to bond to battle in this space. It can't be all about getting people back so you get your click rates, so you make more money. Do it for the right reasons. You'll make your money because coaches aren't dumb. They know when a company there really cares and wants them to be better, they'll pay you back tenfold. I mean, that's been the success for everybody that's been up here, groups like the Lawyers Foundation and others. They show they care first, will give first, you'll get back second. So do that, and we're happy to take a look at anything you guys got you think will make it better, because it's just in step one.
I think you can see the passion, obviously having Chris involved in this tool along with Kelsey, the passion that Chris has brought to this project, and ultimately the result certainly has come through. That's why I said at the start, if I start with Chris, we'll be finished by the end of the panel. But anyway, all good. So we are going to open up to some questions now from the audience to the panelists. So I'm not sure whether someone has a microphone.
Yep, over here.
Thank you.
Hi.
And if we had any come through from Slido.
Yes. So the first question is, should there be a national certification process for coaches at all levels, such as online courses with testing?
That's a great question.
I'm biased. I mean, you know my answer is probably going to be yes.
So Chris, how about you start?
So the USOC is looking at this as a space to get, basically to say, there's a requirement out there. You're required as a coach to be trained when you walk on that field, because we've seen the statistics. We're hurting more kids than we're helping by not being trained and just going out there. And over time, we see this avenue to use this tool to say, get a background check, get Safe Sport trained, go ahead, take the How to Coach Kids course. We'll maybe add a couple of age-appropriate modules. And if you do those, it's the minimum to get on a field with a kid. Now, other countries have that. That's mandated from top down. But we've got to start by having one message. That's how mandates happen from government and other places. But if we step up and use this and then other tools that are out there, it helps. My question to you guys is, how scary is that new space to now have those requirements? Or are we at a point where a background check and other training is getting there where it's kind of expected? So Tiara, I don't know what you think about that.
I believe so. I definitely believe like background check is necessary because we're working with kids. Whether it's life skills or basic things that need to be done before we go into the realm of working with a child, I think there needs to be a necessary.
What's the key though, for those resources coming through, what's the key for a volunteer coach or just a coach in the youth space to not be upset to have to take it? Is it speed? Is it easy of access? Like, what are some of the keys you think really get people to be excited to do it versus fight the standard?
Free. Definitely free and easy access.
Okay.
I definitely think so.
And just on that, I think the theme of think global, play local, obviously coming from Australia, other federations, to Chris's point, this is standard. In Australia, you have to carry your background screen card. It's like a driver's license. So you have that with you. So any parent can ask you at any time to see your working with children's check. So coming into the US, it was very foreign for me to not have this regulation put on youth sport. So I think it's a critical piece that we, as a industry, need to really combine around and say we need to protect our kids first and foremost, both from an education perspective, but also from a background screen and education around what to look for, certainly with kids around that.
Hey, I would just say quickly that we demand, so our young people are in the care of people, and we demand that type of certification or that kind of training in other arenas. I find it curious that we don't necessarily have that in this space, and we have coaches that are spending more time with our young people than lots of other adults, and so it just begs the question as to whether we should allow that or not.
Yeah, no child in this country should be impacted negatively about engaging in sport, and I think that's something we are all very passionate about here as we go through. Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, one more question.
Great. Is that coming from Slido or is that coming from the audience?
It's coming from Slido. So the question is, where have you been most successful in recruiting engaged and committed coaches?
You hit that. How's that?
Most successful would probably be at that second, third grade age, and also within, it's with YMCAs, just generally speaking, that actually have consumable resources available for their coaches. Because of us being a federated organization, meaning the local YMCAs have the autonomy to basically do whatever they want to meet the community's wants, needs, and interests, We have very, very strong YMCAs that have tools and resources out there, and we have other YMCAs and other communities that could be a mile away that are starting from the beginning. And so it creates inconsistency. So with this model, it really should create a consistent foundational approach.
Yep. So that's the time we have, but just to close, Wayne obviously is the Executive Director of the National Council of Youth Sports. He's being recognised today as a Project Play champion for making a new specific meaningful commitment to action. So Wayne, I think you're going to share this right now with the audience. Is that right?
Yeah, we are making a commitment. We're taking the tools and resources from Project Play, and we'll be sharing those with our constituents. So we've got some 270 organizations that are a part of our association. We are an association of associations serving some 60 million young people collectively. And so we're excited about taking the products, the tools that are coming out of Project Play and making those available to our constituents. So we're excited about it.
That's great.
Cool.
Congratulations. I certainly want to thank the panelists for their comments this morning around this very, very important topic. And I also want to know we have the attendee list for everyone who's here today, and we also can track who's been on the app and been through the course. So I think Tom did make mention, if you do want to come back next year, that you have to have completed the course. So please do that. So we are continuing this conversation. So if you want to join for about 15 minutes afterwards, please join us. But otherwise, stick here. We have the featured conversations coming up about US soccer, and then one-on-one with Kobe Bryant. So thank you for your attendance, and download that app, and let's get the standards of youth coaching higher in this country. Thank you.